Karen had always believed that she was the guardian of proper order in her quiet suburban neighborhood. Every morning, as the sun spread its golden light over Elmwood Estates, Karen would stand by her window, surveying the manicured lawns and perfectly trimmed hedges with an air of stern responsibility. In her mind, it wasn't simply a neighborhood, it was her realm, where rules mattered and no deviation was acceptable. For years, she had taken pride in her ability to identify any disturbance that threatened the community's pristine image. Yet nothing in her life could have prepared her for the day when her sense of order would be challenged in the most ironic of fashions. It was a sweltering July afternoon when the day's events began to unfold at the neighborhood pool, a shimmering blue haven that many residents took for granted. The pool was stocked with families, laughter, and the clamor of children enjoying their summer break. Among those enjoying the day was Terrence, a tall, dignified African-American man with a calm smile and eyes that hinted at unspoken strength. Terrence had recently moved to Elmwood Estates and had quickly learned that his presence was sometimes met with discomfort in a community that clung to old prejudices. Although his arrival at the pool was a moment of respite from a busy day at work, Terrence was unaware that this outing would soon embroil him in an encounter that would turn the tide of public opinion. Karen's eyes fell on Terrence the moment he stepped onto the pool deck. His choice of attire, a bright, patterned swimming trunk and a casual tank top, struck her as too flamboyant for what she considered proper pool etiquette. To Karen, every detail of life was an expression of one's commitment to the established ways, and here was a man who seemed to flaunt his individuality in an unacceptable manner. Without hesitation, Karen marched over, her heels clicking firmly on the concrete. "Excuse me," she called out sharply, her voice carrying the authority of someone who believed that rules were absolute. Terrence, who was arranging a towel by his chair, glanced up in mild surprise. Karen's tone was icy and unyielding. "This pool isn't your personal plaything. You need to leave immediately," she declared, her words slicing through the ambient murmur of conversation. Terrence blinked in confusion, not expecting such hostility on what was otherwise a pleasant day. "I'm not sure I understand," he replied calmly, trying to defuse the tension. But Karen was unmoved. "You're disturbing the order around here. You don't belong," she insisted, her eyes narrowing as she stared him down. At that moment, a hush fell over the pool area. Some of the other patrons paused in their conversations while others stared, curious to see where this confrontation might lead. Terrence's face remained unreadable as he responded, "I follow all the posted rules and have paid my fee. I'm here just like everyone else." His words were measured and composed, but a subtle challenge simmered beneath the surface, a challenge to the presumption of superiority in Karen's voice. Before the situation could escalate further, a sleek black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Out stepped a man whose bearing exuded a quiet authority. It wasn't long before Karen's eyes widened with disbelief as the man strode toward them. He was impeccably dressed in a sharp uniform, his posture straight and confident. In an unexpected twist, no one had yet associated him with his identity as the chief of police from the neighboring district, a fact that had somehow escaped Karen's notice entirely. The man introduced himself simply as Chief Daniels. His voice was deep and even, carrying a powerful aura of calm assurance that immediately seized the attention of everyone present. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked in a tone that brokered no argument. Karen's throat went tight. She attempted to explain herself, her words tumbling out in a rush. I'm just trying to maintain the proper order in this community. This pool belongs to the residents who appreciate decorum and respect tradition. You, wearing those garish trunks, are not one of them." Her words spilled forth, laced with a condescension that left little room for interpretation. Terrence's eyes flickered with a spark of amusement at Karen's indignation, though he maintained his calm composure. "Chief Daniels, my apologies if there was any misunderstanding," Terrence said, his voice steady. "As far as I'm concerned, I have every right to be here. I've followed every rule and procedure laid out by the management. Am I disturbing anyone?" Chief Daniels's gaze swept over the assembly of onlookers as he absorbed the scene. The community pool is a public facility designated for all law-abiding residents, he declared firmly. Personal opinions about attire or style have no place in determining who may use the amenities. Karen sputtered, feeling the first pangs of indignation. She had always prided herself on her steadfast adherence to tradition, and now here was a man, whom she had so wrongly presumed would be a subject of scrutiny, and yet he was now enforcing the very rules she wished he would break. In the ensuing moments, the atmosphere was charged with tension as arguments spiraled and neighbors began murmuring among themselves. Karen tried to double down on her assertions, pointing to what she believed were local customs and unwritten rules that favored conformity. "You must understand," she insisted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and frustration, "that tradition and order matter. This isn't some run-of-the-mill gathering spot. It's a reflection of our values." But Chief Daniels's response was swift and measured. "Our values as a community include fairness, dignity, and respect for all individuals," he said, his tone resolute and unwavering. "If you have an issue with another resident's personal expression, would suggest addressing it in a way that fits within the law, not through personal bias." The crowd, initially divided and unsure, began to murmur in agreement with Chief Daniels's words. Terrence's quiet smile hinted at a sense of vindication, while others exchanged glances that suggested a shifting perspective. Karen, however, felt her world begin to spin out of control. How could it be that the man she had assumed was simply another resident could enforce the law with such authority? It was a twist that not only defied her expectations but also sought to upend the very hierarchy she had worked so hard to maintain. Over the next few minutes, the confrontation took an unexpected turn. Several bystanders stepped in to support Terrence's right to exist in the space without arbitrary exclusion. "There's no need for hostility here," one neighbor remarked gently, adjusting his sunglasses as he observed the situation. "We're all part of this community, and we all have the right to enjoy the pool." Another added, "Let's remember that fairness and respect should guide our actions." Their voices, emboldened by Chief Daniels's calm yet assertive presence, resonated through the atmosphere, leaving Karen visibly flustered yet unwilling to relent entirely. Chief Daniels, clearly aware of the simmering discontent among some residents, suggested that everyone take a moment to reflect on what had just transpired. "We all come from different walks of life, with varying tastes and styles," he said softly. "But that diversity is what makes this community strong. If we allow prejudice to dictate our interactions, we lose sight of what it means to be neighbors." His words, steady and imbued with authority, seemed to transform the mood, as if a weight had been lifted from the shoulders of those who had long felt marginalized. In that moment, even Karen felt the stirring of something unfamiliar, doubt about the righteousness of her stance. As the conversation continued under the heated sky, the tension began to dissipate. Terrence maintained his dignity throughout, answering questions, smiling politely at supporters, and reiterating that he was simply there for a relaxing afternoon. Chief Daniels stood as a pillar of fairness, addressing concerns from multiple sides and ensuring that order was restored without any further acrimony. When a resident finally asked, "So, Chief Daniels, are you really the police chief?" the revelation sent shock waves through the gathering. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief as she realized that the man she had derided was not just any resident, but the very embodiment of law enforcement, entrusted with safeguarding the community. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone, least of all Karen. Her face flushed with shame as the gravity of her words dawned upon her. Every statement, every exclusionary remark, now resonated with a bitter irony. Chief Daniels, however, handled the moment with the grace of a man used to navigating life's challenges. "Yes," he conceded, his tone even and devoid of any mockery. "I am the police chief, and I stand for the rights of every resident in this community. That includes you, Karen." His words, though calm, carried through the air with such clarity that not a single person could doubt the authority behind them. The poolside incident marked the beginning of a profound transformation in Elmwood Estates. In the following weeks, the story of that fateful afternoon spread like wildfire throughout the neighborhood, evolving into an emblem of both accountability and hope. Conversations that had once been stifled by fear or prejudice were now held openly in living rooms and at communal gatherings. Chief Daniels spearheaded a series of community outreach programs, each designed to break down the barriers that had long separated residents from one another. His initiatives were far-reaching, organizing neighborhood cleanups, cultural exchange dinners, and even sport and art events that celebrated the diversity of traditions within Elmwood Estates. Terrence, whose calm demeanor during the confrontation had earned him admiration from many, gradually became a symbol of resilience. Neighbors began to see him not as an outsider but as a valued part of their community, someone whose perspective added strength to the collective identity of Elmwood Estates. At one community barbecue, as families gathered under the twinkling string lights and the aroma of grilled fare wove through the air, Terrence found himself engaged in a deep conversation with several longtime residents. They discussed everything from local traditions to the challenges of confronting outdated norms, and by the end of the evening, even those who had once been wary of change were embracing the new spirit of inclusivity. Karen, on the other hand, faced an internal battle. The embarrassment of having publicly scolded a man who turned out to be the police chief had shaken her foundation. At first, she retreated into silence, attending community meetings with her head bowed, her once avid participation replaced by reluctant observations. But as time passed, even Karen began to confront the truth that had been thrust upon her. Her beliefs and behavior had harmed more than just her own pride. In quiet moments at home, she reviewed snapshots of the confrontation in her mind, slowly realizing that change could only come when she let go of her baseless prejudices. The transformation was neither simple nor immediate. It involved many long nights of introspection, heartfelt apologies to those she had offended, and a genuine effort to understand the world from perspectives far removed from her own rigid worldview. One crisp autumn day, Elmwood Estates was hosting its annual Harvest Festival, a tradition that had taken on new meaning in the aftermath of the pool incident. At the center of the festivities was a large communal table where residents, young and old, gathered to share stories and savor the bounty of the season. It was here that Karen, with some trepidation, found herself sitting next to Terrence. A hush fell over the table as the two of them exchanged timid smiles, a silent acknowledgement of the tension that had once divided them and the possibility of reconciliation that lay ahead. The conversation that began at that table was tentative at first. Karen struggled to find words that might mend the gap her pride had torn into the fabric of the neighborhood. "Terrence," she began haltingly, I want to apologize for the way I behaved at the pool. I was wrong to assume things based on appearances." Terrence regarded her with a quiet dignity that was both disarming and encouraging. "Thank you, Karen," he replied softly. "Acknowledging a mistake is the first step towards making things right. We all have a responsibility to learn and evolve." The sincerity in his words echoed in the hearts of everyone present, and slowly, the table became a microcosm of what Elmwood Estates was beginning to embody, a place where empathy triumphed over ignorance. As the evening wore on, the Harvest Festival became a celebration of new beginnings. Neighbors laughed together over shared memories, and even those who had once harbored reservations now spoke boldly about the future they hoped to build. Chief Daniels, who made a brief appearance at the festival, reminded everyone that true leadership was not about imposing order by force but about inspiring change from within. "We must always strive to see each other not as strangers divided by color or creed, but as fellow human beings with unique stories," he said as he looked around the room. His words were met with a chorus of nods and murmurs of agreement. In the months and years that followed, Elmwood Estates became a living testament to the power of transformation. The pool, once a site of contentious division, was renovated and renamed the Community Pool, symbolizing the collective ownership and shared enjoyment of this beloved facility. Terrence became a familiar and respected figure not only at the pool but also during neighborhood events, where he often volunteered to help organize cultural programs that highlighted the diverse heritage of the residents of Elmwood Estates. Karen, for her part, emerged from her shell of defensive pride with a newfound commitment to understanding and embracing differences. Although it was not always an easy journey, her evolution was evident to anyone who knew her. she attended every community meeting, listened more than she spoke, and gradually became an unlikely advocate for inclusivity and acceptance. The process of growth was punctuated by moments of introspection and setbacks. There were times when old habits threatened to resurface. When Karen would catch herself judging someone unjustly or when heated arguments still flared up over minor misunderstandings. Yet, each time, the memory of that fateful afternoon by the pool served as a reminder of how far they had come as a community. The courage of Chief Daniels and the poise of Terence stood as enduring beacons of what was possible when preconceived notions were challenged and transformed by genuine human connection. One breezy winter evening, as snow began to dust the quiet streets of Elmwood Estates, Karen found herself invited to a community potluck at the local church hall. Wrapped in a thick scarf and loaded with homemade treats, she entered the hall with a heart lighter than it had been in a long while. Conversations bubbled up among groups of neighbors, and the once tense air was replaced by an atmosphere of warmth and camaraderie. It was at this potluck that an elderly resident, Mrs. Jenkins, took the stage and recounted the tale of the pool encounter as a lesson in humility and forgiveness. "We all have a tendency to see what we expect," she said gently, her voice carrying the wisdom of many years. "But true strength lies in the ability to listen, to learn, and to let love guide us. Today, I see our community growing in ways I could have only dreamed of." Her words resonated in the hearts of everyone present, and for Karen, they became the final stitch in mending the tattered seams of her old self. Over time, Elmwood Estates not only healed its old wounds but also blossomed into a community characterized by mutual respect and unwavering support. The incident at the pool, which once seemed like an isolated clash of wills, had become a catalyst for profound change. Chief Daniels continued to serve as an inspiring figure, a symbol of how authority and kindness could coexist in harmony. Terence's positive influence extended far beyond his own experience. By simply living authentically and gracefully in the face of prejudice, he had inspired countless residents to re-examine and, ultimately, transcend their own biases. And Karen, whose transformation was a testament to the possibility of redemption, gradually realized that the true measure of her worth was not in the strict enforcement of arbitrary rules but in the compassionate understanding of her fellow human beings. One unforgettable spring morning, with cherry blossoms beginning to bloom along the sidewalks of Elmwood Estates, the community gathered again at the pool for a festival aptly named the Day of Unity. It was a celebration of all that they had achieved together, a living, breathing reminder that a divided past could give way to a future defined by shared dreams and mutual respect. As children splashed in the water and neighbors mingled freely, Karen took a moment to reflect on how a single moment of misguided intolerance had, in time, sparked an unprecedented journey towards reconciliation. Looking around at the vibrant mix of faces, she acknowledged with humility that the true beauty of life lay in its myriad differences and that every person, regardless of where they came from or how they chose to express themselves, had something invaluable to offer. The spark of change had been lit on that scorching afternoon at the pool, and it continued to burn brightly throughout Elmwood Estates, illuminating hearts, dismantling old barriers, and paving the way for a future where every resident stood together as equals. The legacy of that day was not measured in recriminations or lingering resentment but in a deep, transformative understanding that forgiveness and growth were within everyone's reach. As the years rolled on and new challenges emerged, the community held fast to the principles established that day, a firm belief in fairness, a commitment to open dialogue, and above all, a recognition that true power lay in compassion. By the time the anniversary of the pool incident arrived a decade later, even those who had once been its fiercest opponents now recognized it as a turning point, a moment when Elmwood Estates chose the hard but worthy path of change. In quiet reflection, Karen would often recall the stern voice of Chief Daniels and the graceful resilience of Terence, reminding herself daily that life was not about judgment but about embracing every opportunity to learn, to forgive, and to love. And as the community looked to the future, they did so bolstered by the understanding that when differences were celebrated, collective strength blossomed in ways that no one individual could ever have imagined. In the end, the story of that day at the pool became more than a mere anecdote. It was etched into the very soul of Elmwood Estates, a timeless reminder that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit could soar above the limitations of prejudice. The community's shared journey from discord to unity was written into every smile exchanged by neighbors on a cool evening walk, every collaborative project undertaken by once divided groups, and every tender word of apology that spelled the start of healing. It was a story that would be passed from parent to child, from friend to friend, an enduring narrative of hope that no injustice could ever permanently overshadow the capacity for love. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon on that celebratory spring day, casting long, gentle shadows over the pool and the park beyond, Elmwood Estates celebrated not just a federation of diverse individuals but a community reborn, one that had learned that ruling hearts with kindness and listening with compassion was the true measure of leadership. For Karen, Terrence, Chief Daniels, and all those who had planted seeds of unity that fateful summer day, the journey was ongoing, a constant evolution that promised a future filled with respect, connection, and, above all, the shared understanding that we are all custodians of a greater, more compassionate world. Thus, the tale of the misunderstood pool encounter, where Karen once attempted to expel a black man from his own space and discovered, to her grave dismay, that he was the police chief, was not one of defeat but of renewal. It was a narrative that served as a clarion call to every resident of Elmwood Estates, urging them to look beyond appearances, to celebrate differences, and to build a future in which every person was recognized for the goodness and potential within them. In the end, life at Elmwood Estates blossomed into a mosaic of voices, colors, and ideas, an ever-evolving testament to the potential for growth that lies within us all. For every challenge that would arise in the future, the community would be reminded of that transformative day. A day that proved once and for all that unity is achieved not through the exclusion of those who seem different, but through the inclusion of every single person who dares to dream of a better tomorrow. And in that spirit of collective hope, the residents of Elmwood Estates continued to write their story, one of change, courage, and the enduring power of love.